good morning, and good afternoon to in-house counsel from all across North America. Welcome to In-House Connect. My name is Shai Mahani. I'm the CEO and co-founder of In-House Connect. I'm thrilled to have you here with us today. Thank you for spending your breakfast time or your lunch time with us, and special thanks to our wonderful sponsor, LegalTechHub, and our fantastic presenters today, Nikki and Jeroen, Plink, for putting together this much-needed presentation on digital transformation essentials for in-house counsel. For those of you who are here for the first time, let me give you a quick bit of background on In-House Connect. In-House Connect started 11 years ago as a New York City-based meetup group for in-house counsel. Every month, In-House Connect would organize free CLE classes, which were hosted by different law firms, which were then followed by cocktail networking receptions. And every 6 months, we would organize fun and festive networking mixers. Over the years, we've helped thousands of in-house counsel connect with peers and outside counsel alike. The group was humming along, and then, of course, COVID hit. We couldn't meet in person, so we went online, and it's been a fantastic transition. We've been able to attract a much larger audience, truly of in-house counsel from coast to coast. We've been able to facilitate way more networking, relationship building, and we've been able to feature high caliber speakers like the two we have today, who I'm going to introduce in just a few minutes. This is our 20th event of the year, which is crazy. So I'm wondering, I always like to ask this poll, let me know, is this your first IHC event? And if not, let me know where you fall in the category. Today's event, let's get into it. It is Digital Transformation Essentials for Corporate Counsel, Key Basics for Driving Legal Tech Innovation in Your Legal Department. It is held by Nikki and Jeroen Plink. Nikki is the CEO and co-founder of LegalTechHub, a resource supporting informed procurement of legal technology by commercial legal organizations. Recently serving as the Global Managing Director of Innovation and Knowledge at Paul Hastings, Nikki has over 20 years of experience in the legal industry, many of which have been spent driving culture change in law firms and innovation in legal service delivery. Named ILTA's Innovative Leader of the Year in 2020, Nikki is also honored in the 2021 Fast Case 50 list. Nikki is an adjunct professor at Cardozo Law School, teaching legal technology, and is a frequent advisor to law firms, corporate legal departments, and legal technology vendors. Jeroen Plink is the CEO and co-founder of LegalTechHub. Jeroen has been in legal tech since the early 2000s, having started his career as a lawyer at Clifford Chance. He founded 2 legal tech companies and established practical law in the US from 0 to 80% of the Am Law 200, as well as thousands of other law firms and in-house legal departments. Jeroen worked as an innovator at Clifford Chance, advised and invested in many legal tech companies, including Kira Systems, Leopard Solutions, and Case Text. He spends most of his career selling legal tech products and acknowledges that getting eyeballs on products and services is a major challenge in the industry. So hopefully we can, make some headway today in that regard. We are so fortunate to have 2 legal tech experts, Nikki and Jeroen, on with us today to provide us with key basics for driving legal tech innovation in our legal departments. So with that, I will turn things over to Nikki and Jeroen to get us started.
Thank you, Shai. Well, we were going to do introductions next, but I feel as though you have done such a great job introducing us that I don't know that we need to. But Jeroen, would you like to add anything to Shai's amazing introduction?
No, thank you. I think that covers it for the most part from my perspective. As Shai said, it's good to be among friends, and I just scrolled through the participant list, and it is really good to be among friends, as I recognize quite a few names. I think Shai did a great job explaining who we are. We've both been in legal tech and digital transformation in legal for a very long time. When I first started at Clifford Chance as an attorney, I think digital transformation meant replacing ashtrays with monitors. I think we've come a long way from that era, as you'll experience during the presentation, but maybe we can start with sort of the background behind LegalTechHub very briefly. So LegalTechHub is coming from the fact that both buyers and vendors of legal tech solutions suffer from and massive transparency in the market. From a buyer's perspective, and that's mostly been Nikki's experience, is it's a painful experience. If you're looking for example, a contract lifecycle management system, how do you choose from the 100+ systems that market themselves in that space? I recently spoke to the legal ops person of a large company who had just run a beauty parade among 23 different providers of CLM systems. There's a large and growing legal tech market, but it's really hard to see the wood from the trees. And it's not just about selecting tools and onboarding tools. It's also about educating oneself about legal tech. That's hard. There's literally nowhere to go. In other industries, when you buy software, you can go to, I don't know, Forrester or Gartner, but in legal tech, there's no single solution that explains the landscape of the market. From the vendor side, that is equally frustrating. What if you're one of the 200+ document drafting solutions in the market? How do you get your foot in the door? How do you get visibility with buyers and convince them that your solution is the one to buy? So it's an imperfect market from an information perspective. So in 2020, Nikki and her husband, who also worked in legal tech, started the journey of LegalTechHub with the first iteration of the current website. I joined in 2022 after having been at Clifford Chance Applied Solutions, a subsidiary of Clifford Chance, the global law firm, for 2.5 years. I joined in January with a vision to demystify legal technology. We're going about that in 2 different phases. So the first phase that's currently live is a directory that allows buyers to see the wood from the trees. I'm an in-house counsel. I'm looking for a cloud-based transaction management and closing system. It has to support the German language, and it has to integrate with IQ and Adorant. How do I find an application like that? How do I create a shortlist? So that's what our current directory offers. A tool that does the high-level education about the legal tech landscape and allows the filtering and selecting of different applications. Our second phase provides in-depth analysis and insights. What is the landscape for CLM? Why would you need a CLM system? How do you make the business case for CLM to your C-suite? Who are the major players in the space, and how do they differentiate? How do you select a tool like that if you've never bought it before? Where do you start? What's a scorecard for selecting? What is best practice for adopting and implementation? For each of our 150 different topics that we intend to cover, we've identified leading experts that write content for us. We're launching the second phase of LegalTechHub in Q3 of this year. In addition to that, we're building generic digital transformation resources as part of that premium website. So where do you start with your digital transformation journey if you're a 25-person in-house legal department? And then more important, what are others doing in the space? So we all encourage you to explore the directory, and we'd love your feedback on the directory. But Nikki, do you want to go into what we do for legal counsel and legal ops?
Yeah, and thanks, Jeroen. And just to reiterate how pleased we are to be here. Thank you all so much for coming. It's wonderful to see such a robust attendance at a session in the middle of the day. So thank you for sharing your lunch or your breakfast with us. Since our relaunch in March, and really since we started strategizing about the next 2 iterations and more of LegalTechHub, Jeroen and I have made a very concerted effort to focus on the needs of corporate legal counsel and legal ops. And to that end, we now have an entire topic on the site for legal operations, including products and services around enterprise legal management, legal holds, matter management, panel management, and many more. We also have a full topic on the site for contract lifecycle management and its various aspects, and many other topics that are intended to serve you directly. With our premium subscription content that Jeroen just mentioned, coming in June this year, logged on users will also be able to access a dashboard that will push to them relevant content depending on where they're from. So if you are from corporate legal, the content that will be pushed to you and that you will see upfront will be that which is relevant to you. And this will include reports on digital transformation, CLM, document management for corporate legal, and more. This content will grow in both depth and variety over time and will be responsive to your needs. So as Jeroen said, please do reach out to us if there is anything that you want to learn more about. We want to bring it to you. We seek to bring transparency to the procurement, implementation, and adoption of legal technology, and will therefore be your education partners for all things digital transformation. And that's us in a nutshell. But moving on to our topic of the day. Today, we will be speaking to digital transformation and why it matters at all. The role that you play in it as a GC, a corporate counsel, a legal ops professional. We'll talk about the 3 key areas of digital transformation as we see them, and the critical technology capabilities that fall within those categories. And of course, we will leave room for Q&A at the end. I'm going to pause now for Shai to conduct the first audience poll. Shai, there we go. So interesting to see whether digital transformation is part of your mandate, and I'm seeing a very even split at the moment, which is fascinating. So hopefully we can dig into that a little bit more during the Q&A, and also think about whether it is or should be part of your mandate in theory, even if it's not explicitly so. Jeroen, I will hand over to you to talk to digital transformation, why it matters and why now.
So let's start with the state of the legal market before we go into digital transformation. So the legal industry has been one of slow and incremental change for the longest of time. If you compare the makeup of a law firm's or an in-house legal department's technology stack in 1995 and 2010, it was remarkably similar. That is not the case in the last 10 years. I think the last 10 years have brought more change than the 100 years before. There was a true acceleration of change. I think it began in 2012 when the first true AI-based applications like Kira started to become useful. I think that set in motion a motion of increased investment and new technology startups entering the market. If you look at the average law department in 2012, that was basically using 3 to 4 different technologies, and the most dominant ones were the Microsoft suite and maybe some e-discovery tools. You fast forward to 22, and the average legal department uses over 20 different legal tech applications. The applications are far more pure legal tech than generic technology tools, and the tools are much more powerful than they used to be. If you look at ALSPs, alternative legal service providers, in around 2012, they were mostly doing administrative functions as opposed to substantive legal work. Currently, ALSPs are doing work that used to be the territory of law firms. Think, for example, about repapering for regulatory change. A law changes, it impacts all of your 250,000 contracts in your company. These contracts need to be changed. How do you go about that? You don't go to a law firm because law firms are too expensive for that kind of scale of a problem. And your only credible alternative is the alternative legal service providers, who are now providing that level of work at levels of quality that are comparable to law firms. It has become increasingly the territory of the ALSPs and the Big Four. Talking about the Big Four, they were basically out of the game in 2012. They're back now, and they're back with a vengeance. Their legal arms dwarf even the biggest law firms in the world as far as geographical coverage, and they're creeping up the value chain. They have far superior brand recognition than most law firms. They can cover more global assignments, and they have proven that they can enter different markets beyond audit and tax advice. And they're aggressively doing that in legal, despite and actually supported by regulatory changes, in particular in Europe. The other thing that we're seeing in the legal tech market is the level of investment. It's booming. In 2021, $9.2 billion was invested in legal tech. This level of investment drives faster technological change than ever before. And Nikki, would you want to take over and go to the duty of tech competence?
Sure. I'm actually curious. Can you put a +1 in the chat if you have heard of the duty of tech competence while I speak about this? So in 2012, the ABA amended Rule 1.1 of the Rules of Professional Conduct in the United States to insert Comment 8, an amendment that means the rule now reads, this rule has become known, the rule now reads, to maintain the requisite knowledge and skill, a lawyer shall keep abreast of changes in the law and its practice, including the benefits and risks associated with relevant technology. So what we're seeing is something that previously required you to understand legal knowledge and to have legal skills now also requires you to have an understanding or awareness, at least, of what technology can do for you and how it can help with legal practice. The tenor of this rule is echoed in legal opinions that we're increasingly seeing handed down by courts across the country, who recognize in various categories of technology or legal practice that not using the advanced tools that are available in certain parts of legal practice is now ethically problematic. And this rule of tech competence has been adopted formally in 40 states. It is increasingly being adopted. So every few months or so, a new state adopts it. We anticipate that it will become just unanimous across the United States. So if there is nothing else, there is an obligation for you to at least be aware of legal technology in practice.
So there's a long list of factors affecting the market. In addition to the ones we listed on the slide, I'd say the biggest ones are technology advancement, the proliferation of legal. So it's no longer just a 150-page contract, but we will have a 250-page just because we can, and the word processor functionalities allow us to. And then the increase of regulatory change. On the topic of regulatory change, in the almost 15 years since the global financial crisis, in the financial services industry alone, 50,000 new pieces of regulation have been introduced. On a daily basis, globally, there are over 1,000 changes to these regulations. The final external factor that I want to mention that's not on the slide is the Great Resignation, coupled with a rising need for legal services. People chose to leave their law firm life, increasing the pressure on those that stay. Some of the factors on the slide: law firms no longer compete with other law firms. The ALSPs and the Big Four are entering the market, as I said before, but there's also others that are joining. The other day, when I was still at Clifford Chance, we were looking at a piece of work that was for a big global investment bank. traditionally would have been the territory of law firms only. The work represented $100 million in legal fees. There was not a single law firm that was invited to pitch for the work. Who were there? The Big Four, Accenture, and even McKinsey. Some of the smarter law firms are responding to slowly change their business model. A firm like A&O has a wildly successful subsidiary that yields tens of millions of dollars of subscription fees along the make once, sell 1,000 times model. Similar for Wilson Sonsini and Littler Mendelsohn. From an in-house perspective, you've all seen it. Lower budgets, more work, that combined drive the need for digital transformation and the need for legal operations. This is also an incentive to keep more work in-house or outsource more strategically. What do you do if you have to negotiate 12,000 NDAs per year? The answer? It's a combination of tech, labor arbitrage, and often outsourcing. That's not the kind of work you can keep in-house or give to law firms.
And in addition to all of the changes in the market that give rise to a need and arguably urgency around changing the way that we work as lawyers, the fact is that digital companies are simply more successful than their counterparts. An MIT study back in 2013 found that digitally mature companies were 26% more profitable than their peers. They generate 9% more revenue from their physical assets and achieve 12% higher market valuations than other companies in their industries. Digital maturity in that study, interestingly, required building on two different capabilities. So both digital capability, the means by which to operate digitally, but also transformation management capability. In other words, the ability of leadership to manage a company through transformation. In 2016, McKinsey data showed that most profitable companies in the world are those that are driven by digital capabilities. And in the most digitally advanced sectors of the economy, margins are growing 2 to 3 times faster than average. It means that by driving digital transformation in your companies, or at least being a key part of initiatives, oops, I'm sorry, I don't know what's happened to the screen. I'm reconnecting, so I will continue sharing in a moment. But it means that by driving digital transformation in your companies, or at least being a part of those initiatives, you can have a direct impact on the profitability and success of the company as a whole. In 2018, another study of over 3,000 global companies by the SAP Center for Business Insight and Oxford Economics confirmed that digital transformation leads to better profits. And a key part of digital transformation was found to be talent that have digital capabilities and skill sets. The study, and this is to Jeroen's point about the Great Resignation, the study found that most of the businesses surveyed reported that their employees were more engaged following digital transformation projects across organizations, which means that there is a genuine impact on the ability of the business to retain talent if you are pursuing digital initiatives. By hiring for digital skill sets and procuring technology that gives your team and your company digital capabilities, you'll also improve engagement. A recent Accenture report found that only 7% of organizations, however, could be considered future ready. And those organizations are about twice as efficient and 3 times as profitable as their peers. Thank you, Jeroen, for getting that back up. So all of this and other research has also shown that the US economy, in fact, has only realized a fraction of its digital potential. It means there's a lot of work still to be done around digital transformation, a huge amount of opportunity. In fact, we're really only on the beginning of this road, in spite of the huge amount of buzz around it. And all of you are in the potential spot of being at the vanguard of that work. Jeroen, I think it's back over to you.
Great, thank you. So corporate legal increasingly has become the driver. I think there's a growing appreciation of legal departments in corporations. Whereas 15 years ago, jokingly, people would refer to legal as the no department. That has gone. I think currently the legal departments qualify as the enabler of value. With technology advancing and the increasing importance of contracting, the role of legal is more and more unlocking value in contracts. Next to the ERP system for finance and operations, CRM for sales and marketing, and HR systems for HR matters, contract management systems have become the fourth pillar of data and insights in businesses, involving every department of the business. This transforms the role of legal from a necessary evil to enabler and contributor. Contracts touch every area of the business, and legal is the key driver of contracts. It's no longer about managing downside risk, but more about being the glue that connects everything. The landscape for corporate legal is therefore changing drastically. Can we go to the next slide, please? This is an example of a very forward-thinking legal department. Starting in 2012 with just 3 technologies, in 2022 they deployed 24 different technologies. In 2012 they had 100 in-house staff. That transformed into 50 in-house staff in 22, with way more flex staff and more reliance on ALSPs. Against the backdrop of increasing demand for legal services in this department, that's a tremendous amount of change in just 10 years. The changing spend is also fascinating. Can we go to the next slide, please? The changing spend is also fascinating. If you look at a recent Gartner survey that shows that 25% of in-house counsel expects to decrease their spend on outside counsel by more than 10%, and 43% expects to increase their spend on technology by more than 10%. Overall, from these the other two research reports, it's clear that the main focus is on controlling outside counsel costs and driving internal efficiency. Can we go to the next slide, please? This is another survey, this time by EY, and it confirms the need to do more with less. The expectation by in-house counsel is that workload is to increase by more than 25%, but at the same time, 88% of general counsels plan to cut costs during that same period. That is only possible if transformation is accelerated. There's more emphasis placed on efficiency of external service providers, and data and tech plays a much bigger role. Against this background, it's no surprise. Can we go to the next slide, please? It's no surprise that most legal departments come to the conclusion that it's no longer just about practicing law, but it's about how you practice law. And what's your optimal operations model? How do you leverage the right mix of technology, the right mix of the right people and processes to get more bang for buck? The territory of legal ops. A good way to, can you go to the next slide, please? A good way to measure where one stands is ACC's corporate legal maturity scale. How's your department performing on tech, process, and people? There's a direct correlation between maturity and legal ops capability. More legal ops staff leads to a more mature and more effective legal process. Nikki?
Thank you. So in order to make sure that your digital initiatives make a purposeful and sustained impact on the business, it has to really be more than the application or purchase of shiny new technology. I think we are all across this by now. It really has to be a holistic approach to everything that you do. Ben Mueller recently wrote in the Harvard Business Review about the difficulty companies have in making sure that digital efforts stick. And if a digital focus is only about bringing in new technology and not about the underlying processes optimizing those processes and changing the overall business model of a company, it's really unlikely to have the impact that you want it to. But those are very significant changes. And it's very difficult to approach that all at once. So what do you do in order to get started? We're here to talk to you about technology, but part of our approach is not just technology itself, but also ensuring that technology is only implemented when it's actually needed in a way that makes sense for the business, and to ensure that it gets the adoption across a broad user base that will ensure it has the transformative effect it was intended to. Technology that is brought in and never used obviously does not have any kind of transformative effect. And part of taking a holistic approach to digital transformation is ensuring that the whole business is operating digitally. And so true digital transformation involves the integration of technology and workflows into all areas of a business, fundamentally changing how it operates and delivering increased value to your customers. And of course, it's also a cultural change requiring a company to continually challenge the status quo. You don't have control necessarily over the people across the company, but within your team, you can implement a culture that is questioning, open to experimentation, open to pivoting and doing things in new ways. To help focus your digital transformation, and digital transformation generally that is driven by legal departments in a way that ensures you'll make the most impact across your organizations, we've developed a framework that we call the 3D model of digital transformation. As a GC or legal ops professional or corporate counsel, if part of your mandate or part of your interest is implementing digital workflows, you really should be looking at approaching processes differently in all three of these key areas: business operations, as well as legal operations, and the way you cope with outside counsel management. And by ensuring that your initiative envelops all three of those areas, not necessarily at once, but over the course of your strategic roadmap, you will amplify the impact that it has on the company. Shai, if you could go to the next slide. So looking at business operations to begin with, many key operational aspects of the business you work with either touch legal or innately involve legal. Examples, of course, include contracts. They run through the company, the way they're created, the way they're managed, signed, the way obligations are tracked across the business. Legal is critically involved here, and yet it has a massive impact on the operation of the business as a whole. The way that complaints are managed in a business, workflows and processes for which legal advice is always required. In other words, areas of business risk. These are all areas of business operations that legal has a core relation to, and they're areas of the business where you have the ability to help drive digital initiatives, ensuring that processes are optimized and readied for the introduction of digital technologies that will drive efficiency. And legal should be a part of those initiatives, even if it's not the driving force. So to focus efforts or to find opportunities in areas around business operations where you may be able to have this kind of impact, look for areas where things aren't working particularly well. There's confusion. Maybe there are too many handoffs around a contract. Maybe people don't know, or there isn't clarity around signing authority across the business, whether you use your paper or somebody else's paper, or in what instance that is, what instance you use your own paper versus somebody else's. Look for areas where there is ambiguity or repetition or too many cooks. Moving on to the next, Shai. In legal operations, of course, in your own team, there is almost certainly huge potential to optimize processes around work allocation and tracking, budget and spend management, litigation management, and simple things like how documents are stored, the consistency of naming and saving conventions across the team to make it easy to find things. The ability to communicate well and find things easily has the potential to actually make a profound impact on the way you serve the business. A McKinsey report in 2019 estimated that service professionals spend 1.8 hours a day or 20% of their time on average searching for things that will help them in their work. In 2020, Gartner increased this number to an extraordinary 50% of people's time. So cutting down on that waste by implementing improved processes in your team and introducing digital capabilities that make it easy for people to find what they need when they need it will help you to be more responsive to your internal clients, but also more efficient in the way that you operate. Improving the way that you communicate with the business and the way that you manage projects and control your budget is a key part of improving the model of service you implement. In order to make improvements here, you'll need to be tracking now key metrics and also mapping processes. How long is work taking? What tasks are coming to which employees? How long are those employees taking to execute on those tasks? Where are the handoffs? That visibility that you implement now will make it easier later to introduce technologies that are able to digitize those processes, because you'll be able to improve the processes and then put the technology on top of it, rather than simply bringing technology on without really having an understanding of how your team works. Moving on to the next slide, Shai. Of course, outside counsel management. If internal communications are challenging, multiply that X times for external complexity, of course. Tracking and measuring the performance of outside counsel is becoming critical to the performance of a legal department. Digital capabilities are now available that are able to support your RFP process, panel selection and management, with advanced data analytics that allow you to make more informed decisions about what legal counsel to keep on your panel and when to make a change. And this is a really key focus area at the moment for digital transformation, and a critical one. There are many more metrics now available to track, or the ability to track these metrics is now available where previously it might not have been, with better tools around data management and collection. And legal operations metrics is thus becoming a really big focal point in the industry that we'll talk about a little bit more later on. Jeroen, over to you.
I think we first have our audience poll.
So if you're looking at the 3D model that we just introduced, which of those areas, business operations, legal operations, and outside counsel management, is most important to you when it comes to digital initiatives or focus on transformation? Shai?
So throughout this series, we'll touch on a number of technology topics that combined form the framework for the tech stack for the in-house legal departments of today and tomorrow. Which technology capabilities do you need to have to get to the higher levels of digital maturity? We're showing a graph right now, and it's a bit shaded if I... by the look of my computer, but it represents the maturity levels for in-house. On the left-hand side, in-house departments are very early on their journey, represented by the paper plane. It's not too far from the old ink and quill. Very few departments are left here, but some are still there. This phase is characterized by no structured repositories, no methodologies for storing documents or finding documents. The majority of the tech stack consisting of productivity suites like Microsoft Office or Google Suite, but no special tools. As the department advances through organization of matters in Excel spreadsheets, a CRM with custom legal management aspects, a smart contract management repository with processes, advanced reporting, AI capabilities, the department will transform from the proverbial paper plane into the rocket ship. Where you are on that maturity trajectory determines how much value you contribute to the business. Can we go to the next slide, please? So, We are going to be touching on 6 different technology areas in this presentation, beginning with contract lifecycle management, project matter and workflow management, document management, digital forensics and legal holds, panel management and spend management. As this is merely an introduction, we'll touch on each of the areas quite likely, and we'll go into in detail in follow-on sessions as there is demand. So if we go to the next slide on contract lifecycle management. At the moment, it's probably the most hyped technology in corporates. In our opinion, rightly so. With the increasing importance of contracts, trying to understand what is actually in your contracts is key to how you deliver value. The 2 best examples in the last 2 years, COVID and Ukraine. When COVID hit, or when the war in Ukraine began, depending on where one was active, the immediate question for most legal departments became, how does this impact our operations? How does it impact our contracts? What exposure do we have to Ukraine or the regions? Can our customers terminate contracts based on force majeure? Can we terminate our relationships with our Russian customers? What business do we have in Russia to begin with? Without a proper contract management system, getting on top of these critical questions is virtually impossible. Add to that the proliferation of contracts that a legal department need to draft, or the third-party contracts that need to be reviewed and negotiated at scale, and the challenge becomes immense. The final area where a good CLM system helps is being the system of record. What are all the amendments that make up the final and current agreements? When does a contract need to be renewed? How do you measure performance in real life against the contract? And how do you keep your contracts up to date in line with changing regulation? This is where CLM systems comes to its own. The complexity of the underlying concepts immediately has an impact on the complexity of the software needed, the implementation, the change management, and not to forget the communication with all the other stakeholders. We'll be spending quite a bit of time on CLM in one of our upcoming sessions.
Moving on to project matter and workflow management, but I actually just want to throw out a comment from the chat. Bill MC, I can't see your full last name, says, interesting results to the last poll, given that outside counsel spend is probably half of the budget, but legal ops are most important for us. We need more capability to manage outside counsel. I think that's a really interesting comment. It reminds me a little bit of when you're on a plane and you're told at the beginning in the safety briefing that, you know, if something happens and the gas mask comes down from the ceiling, make sure you put your own gas mask on first before you help anybody else, even if you're with the kids. And I feel like this is a little bit similar. Perhaps the best approach is to focus on yourself, your own team first, so that you're in a position with better capabilities to support digitization elsewhere across the business or improve the way that your team works with outside counsel. Interesting comment, thank you. So project matter and workflow management, this is really 3 significant areas of technology all thrown in together. A recent study I saw said that matter management was one of the key areas of interest and focus for corporate counsel at the moment. And understanding where your team is spending their time can certainly be difficult, especially when you're serving every part of a large, complex business and people are fragmented in the way that they are spending time. So we've seen recently newer technologies such as United Lex's Vantage developed to solve that particular problem, providing the ability for legal teams to track workflow across the team. So everybody has a dashboard that they log into. It allows them to track their tasks, manage projects from one place, and allocate work and responsibilities between team members. It also, Zakia is another such solution that's really a matter management solution for corporate counsel. And this provides corporate departments with better insight into exactly where their time is being spent, where there might be waste or inefficiencies that could be addressed. It also allows for better capture of metrics around the way that your team is working, which allows you to show better value to leadership. Solutions like Fibonacci, we've seen develop that allow legal teams to build into them specific matter or project workflows. So if you're working with outside counsel on M&A work, you can actually build out the workflow within the team so that it tracks not just internal tasks, but also work involving outside counsel and where those handoffs happen. Broader workflow automation systems, such as ServiceNow, Nintex, and Autologics, are not strictly necessarily legal technology, but they're technology that is more frequently being used in legal, as well as across broader organizations, to allow businesses not just to create one digital workflow in isolation, but in fact to knit together digital workflows across an organization so that they're not located in isolated pockets, but instead create effectively a quilt of notifications, triggers, task tracking, and intersecting workflows that bring a much truer digitization to the way that work is performed across an organization. And the way these solutions do that is partly by allowing an organization the flexibility of developing their own apps to solve particular problems, but also by integrating very widely with other systems across the firm or the organization. So if you are using something like United Lexis Vantage or Zakia, you may be able to plug it into an Autologics, and that may also plug into a contract lifecycle solution. And then you're becoming much closer to a real picture of digitization across the company. Shai, next slide, please.
Can we actually stay on this slide for a second? We had an interesting question from James Sullivan in the chat. James is asking, how do these solutions differ from Jira, which my fintech company is implementing across the board, even to legal? And Nikki, jump in if you disagree with me. I think there's always the debate between a specific legal tech solution and a more generic solution that's being applied in the company. I think legal is being treated sometimes as a special snowflake where sometimes a special application is really needed, and sometimes there is a special application, and we could actually work with the industry non-specific solution. I'm going to give you a non or a lawyer answer. Actually, it depends. I think in some cases you may be able to get away with a solution that is used across the company. I think where it matters, in particular in project matter and in workflow management application, is the linking with external counsel. A non-industry specific application does not necessarily link with external counsel in the same way as for example, a Fibonacci does.
And just to jump on, Den, you've provided the answer now that I was going to give. I have tried Jira previously in another role as a solution to work with my team in legal. And it's a question a little bit of fitting a square peg into a round hole. Jira is a software development project management tool, and it can be used for project management more broadly. But the difference with the solutions that we've listed here, certainly Fibonacci, Vantage, and Zakia, is that they are geared very specifically to the way that legal teams work. And so they're much easier to customize to the way that your team actually interacts and works and the way that your team interacts with outside counsel. Jira just is not terribly flexible when it comes to that sort of thing. So whilst it's a good idea to use something like Jira, if you don't have the budget to invest in a specific solution, for your team, it's better than nothing. In other words, you may find that it is a little bit difficult and less intuitive that you'd want, and therefore harder to get adoption. So if you do have the budget, investing in something that is a little bit a better product market fit effectively for your team is recommended. All right, Shai, next slide, please. Document management, we are all very much familiar with document management, even in our personal life. It sounds like a simple thing, but as someone who worked in-house myself, I know what a bear it can be when you don't have processes or systems in place to ensure consistency in the way that documents are saved and accessed. Document management systems can be, of course, very significant software investments. So thinking about iManage and NetDocuments where, and this makes sense perhaps where you have a very significant team or where you are being asked to implement a solution that will be in place not just for your team, but also across the business as a whole. And these systems come with all kinds of bells and whistles that really do make life easier. They allow for version control, integration with email systems, auto saving according to matter or project ID, and they can provide for really effective management of content. But if you do not have the budget to invest in something that is specific for document management, utilizing existing technology within the organization, such as SharePoint or Google Docs as common, or Dropbox. And of course, whatever you use here, the critical aspect of document management is organization. So good document management is not just about technology, it's also about practices and processes. And it really has at its core knowledge management, the ability for your team to decide together what folders you want, how you're going to save your documents, where to save them, what names you're going to give specific types of documents, and implementing best practices here, again, at the very outset of using a particular system, will provide you with improved searchability, which will cut down on that time I spoke about earlier that is generally wasted across organizations, and will improve your team's efficiency. So it's worth spending the time up front to do that housekeeping and organization. Next slide, please, Shai, over to you.
Yeah, does anyone have experience with link squares as a solution? And it made me realize that I didn't go through the various CLM options. I mean, CLM is such a crowded market that and it's really hard to make a valid choice within that in that market. That's why, for example, NetApps recently ran a process of beauty parade with 23 different applications. So it's a tough market. I wouldn't be able to answer the questions in particular on link squares. It's one of the leading and faster growing applications, but there are others that are in the same level and are equally good. I want to mention ContractBot AI, not just because I saw Jessica is in the audience, but there's a quite long list of strong applications. If you want to reach out, we do help in-house departments with making the selection. That would be through our resident experts on selecting CLM applications, and we're more than happy to make the relevant introductions. So over to digital forensics and legal holds. Again, it's a topic that has grown in importance due to the proliferation of documentation, data, regulation, and litigation. How do you preserve and find information in gigabytes of data? This problem was always there, but with so much more information captured in different digital media, the size of the problem has blown out of proportion. Some recent regulations, predominantly in data privacy, have only increased the challenge. Increasingly, data subject access requests have become weaponized. You terminate a disgruntled employee, and you immediately get a data subject access request to provide a copy of all the personal identifiable data the company holds on those employees. The cost of that kind of request can spiral out of control and are sometimes run into the tens of thousands of dollars. There are a myriad of tools that help with the challenges, in addition to the more traditional challenges like legal hold and e-discovery. We've listed a few of the current applications. In addition to that, you've got the more traditional e-discovery applications that also help with legal hold software. Nikki?
Thanks, Shine. Next slide. And an interesting discussion in the chat about CLM and document collaboration. Just a little bit of a case study. At the firm I worked with prior to this role, I undertook very extensive discovery on what people were looking for, what the lawyers were looking for from a document management solution. And it was very interesting when you raised collaboration or co-editing. Depending on the practice group, there was an extraordinary range of reactions. So for people in various transactional areas where there was an enormous amount of pressure on them to get large documents out the door before closing, they saw collaboration within a document to be hugely important. But for certain other practices, they found it to be a worst fear kind of situation. So it's very much dependent on the way that you operate and the way that your team operates. But I think a lot of these solutions allow for that kind of functionality as well to be switched off, depending on how you work. So that's one of the questions that you can certainly ask when you're looking at solutions. Panel management, and I want to talk again here briefly about legal ops metrics. Can everyone write say a +1 again in the chat if you have heard about the initiative LegalOps.com? This is an organization that at the moment is gathering examples of the legal ops metrics that are being captured by corporate legal across the country, and allowing you the ability to log in for free and set up your own legal ops metrics by virtue of seeing what other people have found useful to track themselves, with an eye to ultimately bringing a little bit more consistency around the legal ops metrics that are being tracked in the market. It's really interesting, and it's an evolution of what we've seen over the last couple of years with sophisticated solutions like Pursuit and Scout, Eagle Eye, and Apereo starting to come out that really allow legal teams to begin to capture very rich data on their interactions with outside counsel performance, with outside counsel and the performance of outside counsel. And this is really becoming a key area for digital transformation, but also just optimum effectiveness of a corporate legal team. And so solutions in this space provide the ability to track the performance of your outside counsel on a myriad of values, including diversity and inclusion, but also the amount of time it takes counsel to perform certain tasks, their responsiveness, the value of their work, their success in relation to specific matter types, and so on. And the various facets upon which you can gather data is quite significant. And these tools generally will also have data visualizations and all kinds of ways to report on that effectiveness as well. It's interesting on the firm side, law firms themselves are very unlikely themselves to take the initiative to implement this kind of solution. So generally speaking, the drive to implement this kind of solution that captures data on the interaction between client-side counsel and outside counsel needs to come from corporate legal. And with corporate legal counsel asking firms to buy into solutions that they use, there's certainly been success there in setting that up and getting outside counsel on board. Jeroen, back over to you.
Yeah, so our final category for today is much more prosaic, and it actually, in some cases, even involves math. But it's ever so important, making sure that your outside firm billing is in line with your billing guidelines, making sure that one doesn't overpay. How do you make sure you get the right price for the advice you're buying? Most departments no longer accept a six-figure bill for services rendered, but want detailed overviews. But this is one of in the category of be careful what you wish for. How do you analyze rows and rows of data without the use of software? The tools in this category make sure that law firms send you bills in a format that can be interpreted and analyzed by your systems, and ideally verify whether the bills are in compliance with your billing guidelines. Similar to the market for legal tech being transparent, there's also a need to bring transparency to law firm pricing. Why do you go to law firm A that charges you $150K for establishing a fund if firm B does exactly the same thing for $100K? Figuring out which firm charges what in comparison to the others is really, really hard. And tools like Apereo, Bright Flag, Pursuit, and Bodala help with that. But Bodala, by the way, is now owned by Onnit. Again, there may be very good reasons why one chooses the larger or the more expensive firm over the other one, but it would be good to have an understanding of where each of the firms stand. So finally, we go to the audience poll, and this is also a good segue. So this is the first of a series of digital transformation sessions. It will be driven by your needs as to what we cover. We'll bring the vendors to you, and we'll establish what by taking this poll, we'll establish what the challenges are that you face where technology can help. So please complete this last of the polls. We'll have some time for questions, but we hope you enjoyed this session so far, and we look forward to seeing you again. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions after the session. Our coordinates are on the last slide. We'll be at Clock in person and are more than happy to meet with you there to see how we can help your department with digital transformation. So over to Shai to coordinate the Q&A.
All right. So first of all, thanks, Nikki and Jeroen, for a fantastic presentation. So this is the Q&A portion. If you have any questions for our fantastic panelists, please put it in. I have some questions that people submitted from before, but they're a little specific, so I'm not sure how comfortable our panel is going to be, but let's see. Let's see. So the first question is, what are your top 3 legal tech platforms, software, or apps that every legal department must have? And feel free to be general if you don't want to specify one over another, or instead we can reframe the question as, what are 3 digital processes that should be in place in all legal departments, like low-hanging fruit, I guess.
You want to go first, Nikki?
Sure. So to explain to everyone listening, one of the things that is important to us as LegalTechHub is we don't ever recommend one solution as being best in class. And the reason for that is we don't believe that there is such a thing, because it's so dependent on your environment and your specific use case and the way that your team works. Having said that, in terms of categories of technology for a legal team, I really do think, coming back to the basic kind of knowledge management, having a system where you store your documents and processes around the storage of those documents is really, really critical so that you can find things quickly. It doesn't have to be sophisticated, but having systems in place that are consistent across the team, to me, is one of the best ways that you can easily get traction. Another, I would say, is project management, and it can be quite basic. So again, I wouldn't necessarily recommend Jira, but even something quite generic like a Monday.com or an Asana can help if you're running multiple projects across the team in order to track where you're up to. So that's two fairly low sophistication, low complexity, but high value tools. Jeroen, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, no, I fully agree. So for me, if I were to list the three technology areas that I think are most interested for, or most important to in-house departments, I would say start with CLM. Knowing and understanding what's in your contract. I mean, I had a small hiatus after we sold Practical Law Company, and I came back into legal tech after 3 or 4 years, and got much more involved with in-house departments and law firms. And what I found striking was how few people actually still knew what's in their contracts, and a good CLM system can help with that. So for me, CLM, I put at number one. Document management, obvious. It's in a similar type of area or similar reason, is you need to find the documents that you're working with. And then project management is increasingly important. So those would be my top three basic systems that you need to have in place. But obviously, we wouldn't be interested in Legal Technology Hub if we'd like to be restricted by three. So I would create a list of 10 systems and add panel management, spend management, digital forensic legal holds to it. But that may be bending the rules.
What are some metrics to measure work efficiency in a team of in-house lawyers? Any ideas on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky thing to do until you have a way of measuring what tasks are coming into the department, which I know sometimes can be difficult given the speed with which work comes into a department and the many places from which it comes in. But if you have one location or one digital location where work comes in, being able to track the types of tasks that your team is undertaking, and then having an understanding of the amount of time those tasks are taken to turn around, not through time billing. It'd be very difficult to get people to bill time after they've actually managed to leave a law firm, if that's where they started their career. But by understanding how long it takes from the moment something comes into the department to when it goes back out to the person who made the request. I think that is a good, and the responsiveness to emails, the ability to turn work around, from my perspective, would be really the most critical metric that you could set up to understand the performance. The other thing perhaps is, do things come back? So how frequently does work come back once it's gone back out, where it's not the next step in the process, but instead is needing to redo an aspect of it or to address an aspect of it. So those are two aspects of work that I think would be useful to track. But of course, actually tracking it can be a little bit more difficult until you have a system in place to manage that.
Got a question from Dennis Kennedy. Hi, Dennis. Thanks for joining. And his question is, what practical advice do you have on due diligence in the current overheated world of legal tech, VC investment, and consolidation? And I kind of want to, put my own spin on it. And I guess what he's asking is, how do you, figure out what the right solution is for your legal department? Like, where do you start? Is it go straight to LegalTechHub and start clicking around, or what's like the first part, or if the first step people should take?
That's a very obvious first step. at LegalTechHub. Thank you for that shameless plug. I wouldn't have made it, Shai.
I'm gonna put the
No, but
link
I
in
think
the
that's.
chat.
I think there are a few areas to begin, but to answer Dennis's question specifically, and I read it in the chat and I misinterpreted and thought due diligence applications, which are near and dear to my heart. But I think there's a number of things that you always have to look out for. One is and I call them the hygiene factors. It's info security. Those are standard across the range of applications that you may want to look at. It also focus on financial stability of the company. You don't want to hang your hat on an underfunded application, although it's hard with the amount of investment going into legal tech to come across an underfunded company. I think you need to figure out what the problem is that you're solving and search or define your specific requirements based on the problem that you're trying to fix. Identify the solutions that might be a fit and see which one of those fit your specific requirements. So that would be my answer.
Yeah, Jeroen took the words right out of my mouth, but Dennis, it's a good question because that is exactly the kind of confusion in the market that we are actually trying to address, especially through the content that we will be developing on LegalTechHub. The content is really to demystify the world of legal technology and increase the transparency to help you make that kind of decision. It should always start with a problem. There's no reason to bring technology in unless it addresses a specific use case or problem. But then building out the requirements around a solution based on your user needs is really key. And we will have things like requirements templates that you can actually download to give you a head start, because sometimes it can be a little bit of a difficult conceptual problem. How do you begin to set out those requirements? We'll have a starting point for you. And then once you've looked at those requirements, to actually be able to understand what are the solutions within that category that might meet your requirements. So those are the resources that I'll do the plug, Jeroen. Those are the resources that we will have on the site, and we'll certainly keep all of you informed when we go live with that type of content.
Great. Another question, this is a good segue from Ansel. We've been looking hard at selecting a document management system. Still not everybody is understanding the value. I would love to hear stories of how people overcame this challenge. And it doesn't have to be about, document management systems specifically, but about, legal tech. Like, how do we persuade our, business units and, other finance, whoever it is or the GC, how does the GC make the case to invest in these products? Do you have any tips or case studies or other advice?
We will have one of our future sessions for sure will be on document management. And I would advise coming along to that session because we'll provide case studies there. But generally speaking, building up an ROI is just thinking about what is the actual value that such a system will bring. The way that you can do that from a business perspective is generally to understand what is in it for them. So the people that you need to persuade in leadership, you're making the argument in a way that creates urgency for them around the issue rather than necessarily for you and your team. And the best way to do that is to identify where is money or time being lost currently because you do not have that system. And then to show how implementing such a system will enable the organization to save that time or money. And if there's the potential to put an actual dollar value, even if it's a guesstimate or an equation that allows them to do that sort of math on the ROI, that's generally highly persuasive. Jeroen, I don't know if you have additional thoughts around that.
No, I think that's absolutely spot on. It's about the benefits that a particular solution delivers, and about quantifying them. As an example, we looked at or worked with a bank. Actually, there was a large bank. They did 12,000 NDAs per year, at an average cost of £1,500. So that was their internal cost. So a $20 million problem for something as prosaic as NDAs. We figured out a system that helped the bank automate that and cut their costs in half. Now, that's an easy argument to make. I think I'd say similar for a document management system. If you look at how much time is wasted trying to find documents, or what happens when, and I was in a major airline 3 years ago, where none of the files were kept in the document management system. They all lived on individual attorneys' C drives and desktops, and it's a major airline. And one of the employees left, they no longer had access to his files. Then you see the negative ROI of not having a system like that. So.
Yeah, Dan McNulty with a great comment about the airlines. Explains a lot. That's funny. Thank you, Dan. All right, so we have 2 more questions. Unless, I'm a sucker for questions, so if you sneak them in, I'll probably go with it. But 2 more questions from Dan. Dan McNulty asks, what is your guidance on supporting legal technology? Have you seen more success and scalability with a legal department having its own technologists to support the applications versus a model where the broader company IT team supports the legal applications, and consistent, like supporting the broader company, like they're just one unit along with marketing and finance and so on and so forth?
I think it's really telling that Jeroen, during Jeroen's part of the presentation, when he talked about the increase in the number of legal ops professionals and how that led to or was indicative of digital maturity, I think that's likely because the ambit for legal ops professionals often includes some responsibility over legal technology, or technology that legal has some control over or some input on. My perspective, generally speaking, is that for technology that specifically deals with legal workflows, it's enormously beneficial to have at least one resource who understands how that technology works within legal workflows. And so having a legal ops person or someone who is a legal technologist on your team, if you have the fortune of that kind of headcount or budget, is hugely impactful. But of course, for years, we didn't have those sorts of resources, and IT was the resource we had. So that depends on the maturity or sophistication of your IT department and how well you work with them and how well you're able to talk to them about the legal workflows specifically. Jeroen, thoughts there?
Yeah, I would go actually even further than that and say it doesn't make sense to implement a very sophisticated system like a CLM system without the proper support. I'm a big believer in the fact that legal is not a special snowflake. For the most part, we can get away with industry non-specific applications, except where it becomes legal. And where does it become legal? Complicated systems like a CLM system that needs to keep track of an agreement that has been amended 10 times, and how does each of the amendments impact that? That is not something that a generic IT person can support you with. So my recommendation is don't buy an application unless you have the relevant support. And for some applications, don't try to be, or don't let yourself be shoehorned into a very generic non-legal application. I just consulted to a telecom company that insisted on building everything in-house, and it was a disaster. I've never seen anything as unfit for purpose as that. And they built an document management system specifically for their legal department and a CLM system specifically for the legal department, because allegedly there was nothing on the market that was right, and it didn't meet any of the requirements of the legal team. And so where it's necessary, get the specific legal technology app, but only if you can afford to support it.
And just as an addendum to that, if it's something as significant as CLM, you probably won't be able to have the number of resources, specific resources internally to implement CLM. So that's probably one of the situations where drawing on external expertise, at least for the implementation phase, is a very good idea. And thereafter to have someone with specific expertise to maintain it.
You answered the question that I was going to call to. Jonathan asks, are there any recommendations regarding hiring outside firms to facilitate CLM or matter management versus trying to do it in-house? So your advice is hire an expert?
For the most part, yes. These systems are complicated. They require extensive change management. They don't only touch the legal department, but anywhere from anything from CLM, from procurement to sales to operations to finance. And doing a change management program on that scale requires significant experience and expertise in that. So unless you have a rock star legal ops person on board who's done a ton of CLM implementations, budget for the expert to help you select the right, select and implement and ensure adoption. It's one thing that we haven't spoken about a lot, but adoption is probably one of the key measures for success in legal tech. Yes, selection is important, buying it is important, but then finally, how do you make sure that the thing you bought, whatever it is actually being used? And that's something that both your vendor and you have a vested interest in making it succeed. If you fail to use it, the vendor loses out, but you also lose out because you've just wasted the company's resources on something that isn't being used. So everyone's interests are aligned there. I think the other thing, and it's a telltale for how important and how complicated it is. The first CLM company has just been sued for a failed implementation. I think that'll happen more often than not, and I think you can avoid that by getting in expertise into adoption and implementation. I strongly believe that where things go wrong, where two people quarrel, two people are at fault, and in this case, it probably was the company also that could have done a better job. So it's not just the vendor.
Can I also just do another brief plug, which we forgot to mention before? We will be sending a newsletter, LTH Insights, to corporate counsel, and these are exactly the kinds of topics we'll be covering in that newsletter. So if you would like to receive it, it'll be sent on a bi-weekly basis. Please let Shai know, and we'll make sure that you're on our distribution list.
So Two more questions for real this time. And we're going to go with Dennis. We're going to take your question last. Apologies. But first from Hillary. Hillary asked an interesting question. Some firms are hesitant to move from on-prem to cloud and cite security, document ownerships as reasons to stay on-prem. What's your take? Should law firms, and in-house legal departments move their systems to the cloud? And what are your thoughts on the hybrid option?
Yeah, I'm not sure about you, Nikki. I'm a big cloud believer. It's the way most companies are going, and it's I think the firms that are hesitant to go to cloud are the larger firms. For smaller firms, the clients don't care. The clients work in Google Docs, Salesforce, Monday.com, Slack. It's all cloud-based. So the clients, except for the big banks, the clients don't really care. I'd be interested to actually do a poll here. How many people, it's probably too late, but of the clients, how many do care whether their firm is in the cloud or not? And if you can say, I don't care by putting a +1, that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Hillary, your question makes me smile because it's such a common conundrum at the moment. I think I'm similar to Jeroen, and I think many others here. I'm a huge proponent of cloud. It is more secure, is the reality. I think if firms do the work of really looking at their outside counsel guidelines and understanding who is against or resistant to the firm moving to cloud, there's an enormous majority of clients who are very happy for firms to move to cloud. They're using cloud technology internally. It will be a very small minority, and I'm saying a handful of clients, potentially out of hundreds of clients, who really object to it. And in those instances, I do think a hybrid option is a possibility. I've also heard of firms who have gotten clients together who do object in a room with IT professionals who have been able to talk to them about the security of cloud and managed to get to a point where they were able to move fully to the cloud, their full document management system. I also think there is an issue at the moment, which is that a number of significant document management providers and other technology providers are gradually sunsetting their on-prem solutions. So it's going to become a reality, a hard and true reality for firms, regardless of whether or not they're amenable to it. They're going to have to find a way to move to the cloud. And Relativity is a great example. It's true. And increasingly as well, any innovation that happens in legal technology products is happening in the cloud versions of those products. So if you're hanging on to the on-prem version, you're actually falling behind and perhaps becoming a little bit stagnant. So making sure that your firm has a plan, at least, to move to the cloud is really critical.
Okay. Yeah, I think the risk of falling behind in old on-prem systems is that they're actually more vulnerable to attacks than the more modern cloud-based systems, that because their skepticism focus much more on their security.
All right. Got it. So one more question, and it's about CLM, and I want to make a quick plug. If you haven't signed up already, we have an event coming up with Lucy Bassley on May 26th. And believe me, we will blast it far and wide. So, if you don't hear about it, if you forget about it later, we will remind you. But we have a great CLM series coming up with Lucy. So stay tuned for more on that. And our last question is from Dennis Kennedy, who I'm a big fan of. So it's really great to have you on with us today. A follow-up: should we consider a new or a large and new investment or a sale, a vote of confidence in a software program from the market, or is it, more difficult than that? There's been a lot of big investments in CLM companies this year, and would you use that as a proxy for software, judging software company longevity? Any thoughts on these big headlines for these CLM providers and other legal tech companies?
I've been involved in quite a few investment decisions by VCs over the last few years. I don't think the fact that a generalist VC invests in a CLM application or any other application means that it's fit for purpose, or it's a good idea to add just another application to the market. That being said, a strong investment by VC at least ensures that it's financially stable for a while. And to that extent, it is somewhat of a vote of confidence. These people are not idiots who are making the investments, so it helps. But I would go more on who of my peers is using a particular solution and are making an investment in a software package that way, rather than a financial investment that doesn't necessarily translate into a vote of confidence.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't think that it's a vote of confidence necessarily in that software being better than other software in the category. It does mean that they have some financial security, but all you want to know is that the company you choose is secure and stable. It doesn't require that that company has $180 million funding injection a month previously. And if that company with this significant funding announcement is not able to address the requirements of your environment, then it's not the best solution regardless of that funding.
And I forgot to mention the fact that I too am a big fan of Dennis. So thank you.
As am I.
All right, awesome. So we will wrap up. Thanks again, Nikki and Jeroen, for a fantastic presentation. I look forward to, many more presentations from you both on CLM and all things legal tech. Stay tuned for more on CLM with Lucy Bastley. And of course, tomorrow we have the In-House Counsel Guide to Success. That's going to be fantastic. And next week we have 2 amazing events. And after that, every event we do is fantastic. So, we look forward to seeing everybody again soon. And yeah, we'll end here. So thanks everybody for tuning in, and I'll see you at the next event. So have a great rest of your mornings or afternoons or early evenings, wherever you are. Thanks again, and take care.